You're listening to Big World Network.
Average, Season 2, Episode 5. Written by Jonathan Thompson, read by Heather Thompson. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer. More than that, though, I knew that I was going to be one. My entire financial plan in life was to pen an award-winning novel and live off the royalties in an old farmhouse in rural Virginia. Not sure how I decided on Virginia, but that was my destination. I would be reclusive and eccentric, refusing interviews or further publishing deals. My behavior would draw more attention to my first and only novel, placing it in the elusive position of a cult classic. I had all that figured out by about age 8. So Tinactin's misguided advice to write a novel was an intriguing spin on the situation. Of course, I had written tons of stories by the time I was 16, but none of them ever had anything to do with my personal life, or were any good at all. Retrospectively, I was a shamefully terrible writer. I really don't know where the zeal for something I was so bad at came from, but my lack of skill did nothing to dissuade me. My stories were usually just regurgitated forms of whatever books or movies I was into at the moment. I was like an aspiring artist who produced nothing but copies of his favorite works in stick figures. Of course, I would have to change some names and spin some details. Some things would need to be exaggerated, others would be downplayed. But overall, I thought my life, or more specifically the lives of those around me, would make a pretty interesting book. And so, I would write that book. Tinactin had also given me something else. He had helped me rationalize the differences between the workings of powers in comics and how my theory described them. And yes, I was calling it mine. Cosmo hadn't taken the time to actually test it out, so it was mine now. After school with this new lease on life, I prepared for my interview with Mike. He ushered me through the house and into his room, plastered from floor to ceiling with posters of bands I had never heard of, nor would I hear them mentioned ever again. He sat on his bed and reached for his stereo. A huge stack of CDs sat on the table, with at least 8 billion more on racks behind it. "You like NoFX?" he asked. "Yeah, sure. Who doesn't?" Confession time, I had no idea who or what NoFX was. Mike laughed. Lots of people. He mashed play and the speakers blared a series of ruckus but wonderful chords. I was never really into music, so I had no idea what was happening, but I was glad that I didn't have to explain what was happening in my ears and can instead focus on the interview. "So," I began, or tried to. This was still a hard conversation to start. "You have enhanced taste, right?" "Yep." "Well, that's pretty cool," I said, trying to figure out which question to ask next. I was really only interested in seeing how his power had developed. I mean, super sight was an easy one, but taste wasn't usually what one thinks of as a matter of life or death. "When did you first notice it? Like, did it just happen one day?" He thought for a second. "Yeah, it really started to kick in when I was about 12, maybe 13. I felt my eureka moment creeping up on me. That was Gail's age when she found hers, I thought. "How did it start?" "You know my grandfather, always shoveling his food down my throat, asking me how it was or if it needed anything. He never actually wanted an answer, but you know how he is, craves affirmation while refusing to admit it. So one day, it was like my tongue freaked out. I tasted everything." "So how'd you get to be his guinea pig?" "I always liked cooking and eating, so I used to hang out with the old man in the kitchen. Up until then, I thought he knew what he was doing." "Bingo," said my brain. Prolonged external stimulus was present in Mike's case, too. "So what's it like?" "It's pretty hard to explain, man. I mean, I can taste things that most people don't even realize are in the food. I can taste things that touched my food." "Wow. Is it hard for you to eat most things?" "Yeah, I tend to go for bland stuff, unless I really know what I'm getting into beforehand." "You're pretty much born to be a wine expert, then." "You'd think so, right? But with Jim the hero ahead of me, everybody wants me to be some sort of public servant with it. I don't know what they think I could do with taste as my power, but I guess they expect me to figure it out." You could be a really creepy private detective, I offered. Mike laughed. They'd probably be fine with me licking strangers, too, as long as I did it in the name of justice. I cannot stress how happy I was to be sharing a joke with Mike. First of all, I looked up to this guy, and whether he meant it or not, his laughter gave me his approval. But more importantly, it meant that I had broken the ice. He was comfortable with me. I was in. He stopped for a second before continuing. I think it makes it worse that I'm wedged between Jim and Gracie, too. What do you mean? Gracie doesn't do it on purpose, but, she's not like the rest of us. Sure, my taste can be annoying sometimes, and I am sure that Jim smells some unpleasant stuff, but Grace is all downside. So my parents all dote on her and get mad at me for not being more like Jim. It's like they have this perfect specimen, and then someone who needs constant attention, then me. I'm just this normal guy. You don't feel special? I mean, Mike, you have a superpower. He laughed. Mom hates that word. I'd be a pretty lame superhero, man. It's just a hyperactive tongue. Why does that make me so special? And I sincerely couldn't answer his question. He had a good point. Why did that make him special? Who decides what's a power? And at what point does someone become super? Who gets to make that call? I mean, I can pick up tennis balls with my feet. Could I claim a power? Hyperpedodexterity had a nice ring to it. Or just monkey toes. As the last song on the album finished, I wondered how the Superheroes Union would feel about that membership application. I'm sure Mike wondered why I was still in his room. So, are we done? He asked. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, Mike. This helped a lot. Not sure how, but no problem.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
You're listening to Big World Network.